Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 15 tells us this. It says, the naive believes everything. The naive believes everything. You know, you can tell a child, you can tell a child anything. And as you're telling this child anything, then they're going to believe anything. They believe fairy tale figures are real. They believe, characters that are make-believe are real. They have wild imaginations, and they will believe anything that you tell them. Well, the spiritually immature, the naive spiritually, they're going to believe anything as well. And they're going to chase every wind of doctrine that comes their way, and they're not going to have any firm foundation, and they're going to be running after anything, and they're going to be running after everything because they have no foundation, because they're naive. They're spiritually naive. And so as they're naive and as they're spiritually naive, what we come to the understanding of, what we come to the knowledge of, is the reason why they're naive is because they're not rooted in the Word of God. The reality is they probably don't know God, and so therefore they have no desire to be rooted in the Word of God. I had a pastor come to me one time, a pastor. In fact, I saw him in a store. He came up to me. He said, Brother Rusty, we're having this revival. We've got this evangelist. This evangelist is phenomenal. This evangelist is telling us things that I've never heard before. That automatically puts up red flags. We've had 2,000 years of Bible study. We've had 2,000 years of theology. We've had 2,000 years of teaching and preaching. Now all of a sudden you're getting told some things you've never heard before. Maybe in different ways and in different structures, but friends, we've got theology pretty well nailed down. We should have anyway. Oh yeah, he's telling us things we've never heard before. In fact, he is teaching us that, and this is what he said, he is teaching us that you could be saved but not born again. So that guy's a heretic. What do you mean? Well, Jesus told Nicodemus in John chapter 3 that unless you're born again, that you can't see or enter the kingdom of heaven. And so how you going to see or enter the kingdom of heaven if you're not born again? Because you're not saved. Oh, well, I didn't think about that. So here he was, somebody who was naive. Didn't understand the basic principles of the Word of God. And so we see these naive individuals just running this direction and running that direction and chasing everything because they're not rooted in the Word of God. The naive believe everything, but the sensible man considers his steps. The sensible man considers his steps. I remember years ago, my wife and I were walking next to a creek, and as we were walking next to this creek, we weren't swimming in the creek. In fact, it was in the winter. We weren't swimming in the creek. We were just walking next to the creek, and then all of a sudden, I took a step. Man, I sunk down to my hips. I sunk down. I just dropped down just like that. She had to drag me out of there. So now when I walk next to a creek, I kind of step around, just make sure there's some solid ground, there's some foundation underneath there. And if I consider my steps, say, you know what, that looks like sinking sand over there. I'm not walking over there. I've been there, I've done that. I'm looking for that solid foundation. I'm looking for that solid ground. Before I put my weight on it, I'm going to make sure it's solid ground. I'm going to consider my steps. Because that's what a sensible man does. He considers his steps. Friends, we need to consider our steps through the solid foundation of the Word of God and not be tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine that comes our way. We have the solid foundation of the Word of God. Truth of the gospel in Jesus Christ, and we need to stand firmly upon that. Only then are you going to be a sensible man.